This is the Auburn Fanatics podcast with Vernon Speak Sports. But we're going to get a little, well, it's kind of sort of has a little something to do with Auburn, but not directly at this point. We're going to talk about a former Auburn coach who's now coaching in the ACC. He's had a pretty, I would say, an astounding career at less than 45 years old, has gone to several different stops, has had some significant events at those stops. But, he gets on the ACC media days and he talks a lot of things about the SEC, which he got his background from. We're going to get into it. Go ahead and like the video or do whatever impression you want to do. Subscribe to the channel and let's talk about it. Let's absolutely talk about it. Okay, so Brett Lashlee, former Auburn assistant, former assistant at Miami, actually had a couple of stops at Auburn. He was a graduate assistant in 2010 during that national championship year. And also, well, we get into that in just a couple of seconds. Um, Here's the thing. We talk about the SEC being top heavy. That could be true. I'm not here to confirm or deny anything that Rhett Lashlee has to say in that regard, because it can be seen as such, as he goes on to say that, because the SEC is so top heavy that the only national champions they've had is like 6 different teams since 1964. Um, yeah, maybe that's an argument. I mean, it could be. But what are some of the things, and we're going to talk about this later in the video, what are some of the things that you look at as a powerful conference, you know? So, but let's start with Rhett Lashlee. Up and coming coach, obviously, he played at Arkansas and has 2 different coaching stints in the SEC. Most notably, he was the offensive coordinator at Auburn in 2013. That year, they went to the national championship game and lost in the final seconds with Nick Marshall. Pretty good on offense. They did some great things. He was also a graduate assistant on another great Auburn team in 2010 when the great Cam Newton and others on that squad led Auburn to the actual national championship in 2010. That was the first Auburn national championship since 1957. Since then, Auburn has managed to claim a few national championships, but those are the ones that we've always known about. 57 and 2010. They have come forth with a few others, but those are the ones, I mean, just, calling a spade a spade. Those are the ones that at Auburn that most folks talk about. During his time at Auburn, he was a finalist for the Broyles Award, which gives that honor to the top college football assistant, and deservedly so. That offense was absolutely unstoppable, led by Nick Marshall in 2013. Another milestone for Rhett Lashlee, is the fact that as part of his coaching tenure at SMU, he's currently the coach at SMU, been there since 2021. SMU has since transitioned to the ACC, and that was in 2024. And that was kind of monumental for Rhett Lashlee. He got on the podium and had a lot of confidence in talking about his squad, talking about where this program is going, talking about the pride that this team has had with the multiple national championships and, SMU being a storied program. I'm not going to argue that. There's some things that have happened at SMU that could be on the dark side, but that's neither the context of this particular conversation. I think, when you talk about a top heavy football team, Rhett Lashlee said the SEC is top heavy. It's not that much to the SEC. That was the tone. You got your few teams that win the national championship here and there, but for the most part, it's the same 6 teams. Now, I want to talk about what makes a great football conference outside of being top heavy because they win national championships. I think I think Rhett Lashlee could have dug a little bit more into this and gave a little bit more meat to his argument and talked about some of the things that makes a conference really powerful. And I think the SEC crosses those dots. Number one, I think, and well, I mean, it's numbers document that the SEC generates a lot of monetary revenue. You got Texas that over a 3-year span, now a SEC football team averages $183 million in revenue per year. And they even went on to say that if somebody, let's just say, comparatively speaking to an NFL football team, if somebody tried to buy the Texas football franchise, if they were a franchise in the NFL, that it'd be in the billions of dollars. Top among college football. Alabama also making about 133 million a year in revenue. That's the average over 3 years. Tennessee 124 million over 3 years. Auburn, and see, here's the crazy part about Auburn. Auburn has not had a winning, successful football record on the Plains since 2020. We're talking about almost 4 years. That's almost a full generation of recruiting as you start to overlap talent. Auburn averages 118 million per year for the last 3 years. Florida State was the highest in the SEC conference that Rhett Lashlee is a part of at 86.7 million. Okay, so already, the SEC is a little bit more than a top heavy program. The SEC generates a lot of money. Then you start talking about national championships. Yeah, Alabama has the most in college football playoff era with 6, and in Georgia with the back-to-back in 2021 and 2022. The conference was pretty strong, though, because Alabama actually won the national championship. And a part of this, you have about 4 or 5 teams that won 9 or more games. Well, you have 5 teams that won 5 or more games in that 2021. I mean, they had 9 or more wins in that 2021 season. And that's kind of the indicative platform of the SEC. They don't just have, everybody can't win the national championship. Of course, the teams that recruit well, the teams that have the best coaches, the teams that have the best players, the teams that have the best luck, the teams that, you know, win the right games at the right time, those are the teams that put themselves in position on a year in and year out basis to win national championships. Alabama, Georgia, over the past few years, they've just had that. They've had crazy top recruiting classes to put themselves in a position to either win in one of the more perceived powerful conferences in college football and put themselves in a position to win a national championship. I think that's what makes a conference pretty strong. I'm not saying that Rhett Lashlee is wrong, but I think he needed to have a little bit more meat in the conversation as to why he thought the SEC was top heavy, because I think just having the same 6 teams as the national champion since 1964, that's just not a I just don't think that's a huge argument. Another thing that the SEC does well is they put guys in the league, and not only do they put guys in the league, they put them in the league early. We just used the 2021 season as just a sample size, and this is pretty much the same thing every year. The SEC had 67 draft picks in NFL out of the whole shebang, right? 20 of those were picked in the first round. Since 2009, the SEC has had 46 top picks in the draft. That's branding. That's a recruiting point. That's a competition point. Folks want to come to the SEC to play football. Another thing, when you're a great conference or you're great at anything you do, usually folks talk about you. I cannot recall even Hugh Freeze in his address to the SEC media, he didn't say anything about, Baylor. Okay, we have this big test against Baylor, a huge opportunity to play against a top Big 12 team. He didn't say that. He didn't mention that brand as the reason that this will be a big game. He mentioned that it'll be a big game because it's one he's got to win. And of course, a win against Auburn for Baylor will be huge because they have aspirations to win the Big 12 this year. And how many teams in the ACC outside of Miami, outside of Florida State, or Notre Dame, who is a ACC team when it's convenient for them? How many teams are storming the field after a win against SMU? This is absolutely no disrespect to Rhett Lashlee, but you got that name recognition as well. Nobody is talking about SMU as far as a team that, okay, if we beat them, that is a litmus test as to where we are as a program. As a matter of fact, SMU has some business they, kind of need to handle on their own because they got a tough schedule this year, a really tough schedule. As a matter of fact, they got a hot date with a Baylor team that will be coming fresh off of either an Auburn win or Auburn loss. They will be taking on Baylor at home. I think that if you're going to talk these type of talking points in SEC media days, these are games you got to win. You got to show and prove from your program and from your standpoint that, albeit the SEC being top heavy, where do you fit in the top heaviness of your own conference? SMU is just, they have not solidified themselves outside of making the college football playoff and having the best showing that they could possibly have based on their talent in that playoff situation. Still have not solidified themselves as the team to talk about. And the ACC they had a great run. I think Miami had a great season. Florida State just fell completely off the map. The ACC just really has to get themselves back to a point of relevance, to be honest with you, because it's just not there at this moment. Yes, I think SMU making the college football playoff is great. Would they make have an opportunity for if they expanded to 16 teams? Probably so. But what happens when you get there? And what happens when you don't get the results that you need, but then you have the SEC talk, top heavy SEC? All right, so what I need y'all to do is get into the comment section. Go ahead and like this video, the Auburn podcast, Fanatics podcast, and let me know what you think. Go ahead and subscribe and leave in the comment section what you want us to talk about next. And for my brand, as always, it's great to be an Auburn Tiger, War Eagle.